Hey there, guys. It's Nick, the ASMR nerd, and welcome to another episode of Relaxing Reviews. Today, we're taking a look at another keyboard from Drevo. This is the third keyboard from Drevo that I've reviewed here on the channel, and you might remember that the last board we looked at from Drevo, the Blade Master Pro, was a high-end keyboard priced at about $150. Today's board is at the other end of the spectrum. This is a budget keyboard, and it is the Calibur V2 mechanical keyboard. This is an evolution of the popular Calibur board that Drevo has put out for a few years now, and it packs in full RGB backlighting, side lighting, and a very unique compact layout that's somewhere between a 60% board and a 75% board, all for a very affordable price of $50. And as somewhat of an aficionado of weird compact mechanical keyboard layouts, of course I had to get my hands on one of these to check it out. So Drevo was kind enough to send over a review sample for us to look at here today. And of course, if you're interested in what you see as the review is going on, there are purchase links down in the video description where you can check out the Calibur V2. And if you check carefully, you might find a 10% off discount code that'll get you this board for an even more affordable $45. So without further ado, let's take a closer look at Drevo's Calibur V2 mechanical keyboard. And here we have the Drevo Calibur V2 in box. And it's a pretty smart looking box, actually. It has all the same aesthetic cues as the Blade Master Pro, also from Drevo, that we looked at a little while back. And you can see it's pretty clean on the front. We've got a glossy depiction of the board with all the RGB finery turned on there. Got the name up here. We've got kind of a matte black background. Got a little Drevo logo in the top left corner. And that's basically it on the face of the thing. It's attractive. Nice looking front. On the flap here, Drevo Calibur V2 TE. So again, there's two versions of this board, just like with the Blade Master Pro. There's the Pro version, and there's the TE version. The TE version is the more inexpensive of the two, the value version, if you will, which is usually made with a bit less metal, a bit more plastic, and lacks wireless functionality. So I believe there is a Pro version of the Calibur out there which has wireless. I could be mistaken about that. It might be that it's coming along and it's not out yet. Not certain. Anyway, this is the TE version, which is the wired version. Wired RGB mechanical keyboard. And then we've got that yellow, what I've come to identify as the Drevo yellow, around the side here. Product is sealed with a couple of Drevo branded seals. Drevo branding around that side. And as with previous Drevo products, we have a little rundown of all the different options here. And this one is denoted as a model with brown switches and a US English layout. This particular board is available with brown, red, blue, or black switches all provided by Outemu. So that helps keep the cost down. Really nothing else to see there. Drevo branding on that end. And then here we've got actually a fairly clean looking back too. A lot less cluttered than on their previous products. I remember the back of the Blademaster Pro box was a bit of a mess. So here we have, again, a picture of the keyboard. Specifications, switch Outemu, says so right there. Keycap material, ABS. I suspect that the keycaps are going to be the same ones as we had on the Blademaster Pro, which, if you recall, I wasn't a big fan of. Unfortunately, I found them to be a little thin and chintzy, and they are not double shot. They are coated and then laser etched, but we'll see. I could be surprised. We'll take a look when we get inside here. Dimensions, USB Type-C connector, RGB backlighting, of course. 17 different lighting modes. Works on Windows or Mac. Package contents there. Some certifications. Over here, Outemu RGB switch. Rated for 50 million keystrokes, just like a Cherry MX. And a new 71 key layout. More compact, more convenient. That is hard to argue with. I think that the layout is going to be one of the standout features of this board. Because, as I mentioned, you know me, I love my compact boards. And this one appears to be very unique in its layout. I'm not aware of any other boards quite like this. And in fact, it's very close to, a layout that I myself had dreamed up as being pretty close to ideal. So, yeah, PC Mac mode free switch. I guess that's good. And RGB backlight and side light. That's right. This thing has this interesting side light, which we'll of course take a closer look at shortly. But it's kind of got these individual pieces instead of being a continuous light. And the full RGB backlighting supported by Drevo's software. So you get all the 16.8 million colors. All right, let's, I'm just gonna peel off these seals, if I can, easily enough. There we go. Like I said, Drevo branded. They seem to have it's a horse. It's like a knight almost, but it's got this like gear as a mane. It's kind of a cool logo. Let's see if we can get this one. Okay. So, nice box, informative, looks good. Would look right at home on a store shelf beside something from any of the big manufacturers. It definitely has that Razer feel about it, doesn't it? I feel like they're trying to be like Razer. Okay. Inside, the keyboard is nestled between some pieces of cardboard. No foam to be seen, but I suspect there's enough space provided here to protect the board reasonably well in transit. The board itself is contained within Oh, interesting. It's in this foam material baggie, but then underneath that there's also a dust cover that I can feel. Which seems like almost unnecessary, but let's just move that out of the way for the moment. Has a good weight to it, considering it's wired, it has no battery in it. It feels solid. Pack-ins. Oh, the ever coveted Drevo sticker. Although this one, oops, not nearly as flashy as the one that we got with the Blademaster Pro. Do you remember that one? That one was like holographic. This one is just basic. That's okay. Drevo's warranty card. Like or don't like, with the little monster sad and happy. And if you like it, they direct you towards their website and their social media presence. And if you don't like it, they give you information about the warranty. So here it says, you can return the product within 10 days after the delivery date for any reason. We offer 30 days money-back service and lifetime tech support. So this is another situation where I'm not quite clear on how long this warranty actually lasts. 10 days, no questions asked returns is great. But 30 days money-back service and lifetime tech support. Lifetime tech support implies maybe a lifetime warranty, but I don't think it is. So, again, I will look into that and let you know how long the actual manufacturer's warranty for parts lasts for. I'll have to let you know a bit later in the review. And the user manual, which we'll take a closer look at in a second. And then, okay, this whole sort of framework lifts up, and underneath we've got USB cable, keycap puller, a wire keycap puller, very nice. And, yes, the magnetic feet, removable magnetic feet. We'll take a look at that in just a second. Let's get this box out of the way here. And we'll take a quick look at some of these pack-ins before we look at the main event there, the board itself. So, won't spend too long on this stuff because you'll have seen a lot of USB cables in these reviews by now, I reckon. But anyway, this one comes in a little plastic baggie. It just has generic molding. There's no Drevo branding on here, which is interesting because, again, if you remember our Blademaster Pro review, we did get Drevo branding, but I guess those cables are probably more expensive to produce, so we just have generic black molding on this one. Same on the USB-C end, and this is also a straight connector, not a right angle connector. And we get a nice Velcro cable tie here, but again, no Drevo branding. It's just generically, or not branded at all, it's just blank. It's funny that they would go to the extra effort of getting all that branded stuff for their high-end boards. Well, not that funny. I mean, it makes sense, I guess, but I'm just a little surprised that we didn't see that all the way up and down their product stack, but only the expensive ones. These budget-oriented boards do not get the Drevo branding on their bits and pieces. It's okay though. And this looks to be pretty standard, about 3 feet, maybe 4. There you go. Keycap puller. Same story though. Look at it. It's generic. No Drevo branding. Again, the Blademaster Pro came with a Drevo branded keycap puller, but I will say this one is a wire keycap puller, which is great because they are by far my preferred type of keycap puller, in that they don't damage your caps, and they are easier to use than the sort of clipping hooky type. So nice little pack in. Then these feet, what a strange thing. We'll see exactly how they work when we take a look at the board, but take a quick peek at them very quickly here. These are just little bits of plastic. They have anti-skid rubber on them. They have magnets on this side, and they magnetize onto the main board, and they're just like little flip-out feet, you know, that you'd get on any board that lets you lift it up a little bit, increase the angle. But why Drevo would go for standalone magnetic feet, which are probably pricier to produce, and also you're prone to losing them. Like if you lose it, that's that, right? Why they would choose these over standard flip-up feet, I can't imagine. It seems like a weird over-engineered solution to a problem that had already been solved. But we'll take a look in a moment and see how they work. I guess they're unique, you know, they're a bit different, but I don't know. It just seems like a strange solution to that particular problem. And then we've got our user guide, Calibur V2 TE. Very understated on the front there. And inside we've got a list of languages. We've got a picture of the board and the layout. Information about what's included in the package, keyboard shortcuts, for controlling lighting and such. Dual system support, so different shortcuts for Windows and Mac. Yep, the hardware settings for backlighting, and then where you can download the software, the DPC, Drevo something. I've forgotten what it stands for now, but anyway. And that's pretty much it. And then they've got that in every language, so that is that. All right, let's take a look at the main event. As I said, came protected in one of these foamy-ish kind of bags, which is always kind of like these things. It's a nice material. It's a little bit squishy. And it comes with this dust cover on it, which again seems a little redundant given that it's got that bag, but now how do I get this off? Oh, there. It's quite fitted. It's almost like a cap. I guess you could use it if you were, leaving is sitting out for a while or transporting it or something and you wanted to, you know, protect it, I guess that would work. I don't know why you'd really want to keep this, but if you wanted to, you could. Okay. Here is the board. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Very unique layout, isn't it? Very minimalistic appearance from the front. Really nothing extraneous there. It's purely functional. We'll have to pull a keycap off and look at those in a moment to see exactly how they're made, but they look and feel to me like single piece ABS with coating and then a laser etching. But the board has a nice weight to it, especially as I mentioned, considering it's not wireless, so there's no battery in there. Along this front edge, it's just this lightly textured ABS plastic. And it's kind of got this beveled edge here, wraps around or kind of transitions to the back. Around the sides, we see that edge is where we get our side lighting, and it manifests in these individual kind of strips or pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spots where the light shines through. And then it kind of comes down to this back corner. You can see the board does naturally have a bit of an incline to it, probably 5 degrees or so. You can also see that the keys are standard OEM profile with the standard stepping for the rows. Around the back, nothing to write home about, except for a cutout here and a cutout there, and our USB Type-C connector right over there. But very clean overall. And on this side, identical to the other side. And these edges are rounded, nice and soft, nicely finished. Overall, from the front and the sides, very clean looking board. And I like that, personally. You know me, I like my minimalistic designs. Alright, let's take a look around the back here. Okay, so this is sort of interesting looking. We have feet. 1, 2, 3, 4 anti-skid feet. We've got this sort of molded, angular look going on. We've got clearly a spot here for a cutout where if you had the Pro version with the wireless transmitter, it would go right there. It's the right shape for a USB wireless transmitter. It would just be stored there, and then you could, plug it in. But that's not here. And then kind of for something else. Could be for switches. I'm willing to bet it's for an on-off power switch, again, on the Pro version of this board, the wireless version. Got some logos and such, Calibur V2, certifications, quality check sticker, and that is everything. Nothing else to see there. The only thing that, I don't want to say mars the front, but the only thing that interrupts the continuous bank of keys is this little gap right here. And it's just a little plastic gap in there. But that gap actually is kind of important because if you look at the layout, this is a very unique layout. I've never seen one quite like it before, and I like it a lot because it packs a lot of functionality into a tiny footprint. So your standard 60% board would end right here. Oh, I'll do that in such a way you can see better. It would end right here. And you'd have these buttons, and then you'd have a fourth 1.5U size button. What we have here instead is two additional 1U width rows, which allows us to fit in dedicated arrow keys over here, as well as a bunch of the nav cluster. We've got insert, home, delete, and pause / print screen, and page up and page down. Other than that, it is basically a totally bog standard 60% layout. But by having this gap here, this actually allows us to maintain really good keycap compatibility, because none of these are weirdly sized. The shift hasn't been cut into or compromised. We don't have a whole bunch of like 1U control or function keys down here. Everything that you see on here is a standard layout or standard size key for its, for its function. And as a result, the Calibur V2 should maintain very good keycap compatibility. You should be able to buy any cheap set of caps from anywhere and have what you need. So that's really cool. I really appreciate that. It's especially important in the budget range because you want to maintain compatibility with inexpensive sets, because the people who are buying this kind of board are budget-minded buyers, right? So you don't have to buy crazy expensive sets with all kinds of alternative weird caps. Now, this board comes with Aotemu browns, but they're not the floating style keys where they're all sort of floating above a metal backplate. They're actually recessed into the case here. I assume that underneath here is a metal or maybe plastic backplate. But let's pull off a couple caps so that we can see. So we can also get a better look at the back of the caps, and we can get an up-close look at the Aotemu brown switches, which, to be fair, are quite a known quantity. No surprises about them. They are solid performers. Aotemus do a great job of emulating Cherry switches. I have no problem recommending Aotemu switches, even though they are quite a bit cheaper, which is great. You save some money, but get similar performance. I've never had an issue with an Aotemu switch failing on me. And they feel pretty much just like Cherries. Very similar. Just pulling off a few here so we can see what that backplate situation is like. I'm trying to do it quietly. Okay. I can pull off even one more so we can get a slightly clearer look at that backplate. Alright, so Aotemu browns. You can see the branding on there. The RGB versions, so they have translucent housings. Nice tactile bump on those traditional brown stems. These actually, honestly, they feel a little smoother than other Aotemu browns. I wonder if Aotemu's done something with their browns. A little smoother, a little less scratchy, nice and snappy. Honestly, really solid switches if you like a tactile switch. And then that back plate in there is... sounds metal to me. It's a little hard to tell, but I'm going to take a closer look at it here. think that is a metal backplate sitting in there. Oh, interesting. I saw something here that I want to take a closer look at. We're going to pull off a couple more caps. I want to look at the stabilizers on here. But before we do that, actually, let's take a closer look at these caps. Yeah, so just as I expected, if we look at the backs, we will see it is one piece of translucent white ABS that has been coated with this black, matte, almost satiny finish, and then laser etched, which produces very nice, clean, sharp legends. But unfortunately, because it's not double shot, if this finish is to wear off, you will lose your legends. Again, I do not know, just as the case with the Blademaster Pro keycaps, I do not know how durable this finish is. I do not know how long it'll last, but certainly it is more prone to wear than a double shot cap. So it's a little disappointing that Drevo continues to use these caps. The thickness on these caps actually feels a little thicker, if I'm being totally honest, than what I remember the Blademaster Pro caps feeling like, which is very odd, because the Blademaster Pro is quite a much pricier keyboard. These feel a little on the thicker side, a little less flex there. So in that respect, I feel totally fine. But it would just be nice to see double shot caps from Drevo, because they are more durable in the long run. But I assume that Drevo chooses to go with the system they do, either for cost reasons or for aesthetic reasons. And it's hard to argue, because they do look nice. They're a really nice looking set of caps. Really sharp looking. But I don't like this texture as much under my fingers as like just a raw ABS or PBT. And again, they are prone to wear more so than a double shot cap would be. All right, let's just take a couple more caps on here, because there is one more thing that I want to take a peek at. And that is hanging out underneath this big old shift key. Okay, so yeah, we can see it is definitely a metal backplate. I can feel that. But what I wanted to look at here was these stabilizers, and I believe that these stabilizers have been lubricated, which is a nice touch. Yes, definitely. You can see, if you look right next to that stabilizer, next to the shift switch there, you can see a bit of the lube has actually leaked out of the stabilizer and is on the back plate there. It's not really a problem. You're not going to notice it unless you pull all the switches off, but I just got a little bit on my finger there. Maybe you can, or not. Anyway, trust me. Yeah, it's those stabilizers are lubricated, which is great, because you actually don't see that commonly on these more inexpensive boards. Often you've just got the dry stabilizers in there that tend to rattle quite a bit, can sometimes be a little scratchy, or they will bind, which is even worse, and that makes those keys feel significantly worse. But here, because the stabilizers have been pre-lubed, we should get nice smooth action on those stabilized keys, and indeed we do. Oh, and on the spacebar, listen. Yeah, we got some nice action there too. Backspace, yeah, that all feels really good. Okay, so that's really nice to know. A little bit of rattle on the spacebar, but not too bad. Overall, totally normal amount of rattle on these keys. I'm just going to put these guys back on here. And the one thing I will say, something that I have noticed here just as we've been playing around with this board, is that there seems to be a fair bit of pinging going on. But you can hear that there, can't you? Listen. Kind of reverberations throughout the board after you depress a key. A metallic reverberation. And that probably has something to do with the back plate. The way it's secured, maybe. But there's quite a bit of pinging all across the board. Less so up there, but more so down here. It's not a deal breaker. Some people don't really mind it, but some people are very picky about the sound of their boards, so that'll probably come out in the typing test. When I'm typing, you'll probably hear quite a bit of that, that pinging noise. Oh, one last thing before we wrap up this tour of the board. These feet. What the heck is up with these feet? Let's see. Flip it over. Back is this black textured plastic. I think I probably made that clear earlier, but all plastic construction for the chassis there. Okay, so these just snap into place just like that. As I said, they're magnetized. And it's just a weird solution. They come off, they snap on right over the old feet. I'll let you prop it up a little bit. It does seem to work. But why? That's what I want to know. Why? Wouldn't flip out feet work just great? I don't know. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? It seems to me that these are prone to getting lost or to not fitting properly. I mean, yeah, they're kind of cool. They're unique, but I just don't see the reason. Anyhow, certainly not a deal breaker, though. I don't use my boards propped up that much anyway, so. All right, well, initial impressions are quite favorable. Like, really, actually very, very favorable. I like the layout. I like the construction. It feels solid, although plastic mostly, but solid. Pinging's a little regrettable, but the lubed stabilizers are nice. The Otemu browns feel really nice. The keycaps also somewhat regrettable, but that seems to be a choice across Drevo's whole product range. Maybe they'll change it in future. But hey, you know, with the money you save on a cheaper board like this, you could put another $25 into a set of caps or something off of, you know, AliExpress or whatever, to spruce it up a bit if you wanted. If you wanted something that felt different under your fingers. Okay, next step is to take a look at the backlighting. Let's go do that. All right, here we have the Calibur V2 plugged in and lit up like a carnival. It's looking very colorful right now, as you can tell. Just so you know, if you see any flicker in the LEDs as you are watching, that is not visible in real life. That is just an artifact of the interaction between the camera shutter speed and the LEDs themselves, but it is not visible in real life. IRL, the LEDs look very nice. They're very smooth, quite colorful. Not the brightest I've ever seen, but generally pretty darn good looking. And it looks like we've got a lot of options. So Let's start off with the side light here. You can see that this board, the Calibur V2, has a very unique side light arrangement where it's got these LEDs in kind of a strip of individual LEDs here. And they are fully RGB, so they will animate, as you see, in a variety of colors. If we go function and the side light function insert, changes the side light. So we can go solid color, a handful of solid colors. Or you can turn them off. Or you can cycle through your colors. Or you can go back to the rainbow, the midway look, if you prefer. And I believe that's everything. So there's not actually that many default colors. It's a small handful. Maybe like 8 different presets total there. We can count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, off, and 8. So yeah, there's 8 different side lighting options there. But I do like the way it looks with that kind of segmented side light. I think that looks pretty good, honestly. Let's turn it off for the moment, though, just so we can see the effects of the backlight a little better as I switch it. So function insert will change the backlight. I currently have it on this ripple mode that's coming out from the center. Before we go further, I can change the brightness. Okay, so that's max brightness. The whole board flashes to let you know. But we can dim it. Looks like 4, 5 steps, including off, I guess. 2, that would be 3, I guess, including off. 4, 5, and then we hit the top. Yeah. You can also change the color of any pattern like this on the fly. So if I go function end, you can get the same pattern, but in a variety of preset colors now. So that's kind of nice. And that applies to any of the animated settings. And then back to the rainbow. You can also change the speed with function and the arrow keys. So let's speed it way up. There, that's as fast as it goes. But that's ripping along at a good speed. Now let's slow it way down. That's as far as that goes. You can see it's barely creeping along there. Very slow, but very chill. It's actually quite soothing, honestly. I think I'll keep it on the second from the lowest. Looks like ripples on a pond. Okay, but anyway, let's go function insert and look at some of the other settings here. Oh, sorry, that's my side light. Turn that off again. Function home changes the backlight. All right, so we've got like a row, a rainbow row, rainbow road, no, rainbow rows. Let's slowly scroll down. This is waves moving across the board. Again, they're in rainbow, but they could be one color if I went function end, but I won't. Okay, this is a cycling, a rotating kind of backlight. This looks to be, oh, yep. Okay, so the whole row lights up. This is another, okay, so that lights up in sort of bars coming out, shooting out from the button you press. And in a big circle. It's quite colorful. Each row lights up. And a lot of these look very similar to what we saw on Drevo's Blademaster Pro. To probably no one's surprise. They might use the same light processor for the backlight, actually. Which means, if that's the case, you're actually getting a pretty decent deal on this one. Okay, we've got the sine wave. Got kind of diagonal stripes moving across. I honestly am not quite sure what this pattern is. It's another rainbow thing. It looks nice though. Okay, so there's a solid backlight, and again, you can cycle through all those preset colors if you like. This is the old classic, lights up and fades out as you press them. This one changes colors as you press them. Oh, this is a raindrops type. We can speed it up a little bit and see it a little better. It's a little jarring how it flashes, the whole board flashes white like that when you hit the end of some configuration. Anyway, that's nice. Now it's a more intense kind of raindrops where they're off and then they flash on, as opposed to being on and kind of on and off periodically, if that makes sense. All the keys slowly fading through various colors. And a breathing. Classic breathing effect. And of course, cycling through a single color for the whole board, but cycling through all the various colors of the rainbow. And that's it. We are back at our ripple coming out of the center, which I think is my favorite of these lighting options. It's just very chill. Like I said, like ripples on a pond. Definitely into that one. So overall, actually quite a large number of baked in settings that you can access through hardware with no software or driver required. And they look pretty good. As I mentioned with the Blademaster Pro, similar situation applies here. The colors are bright and vibrant and vivid, and I see no visible flicker in the LEDs IRL. So they look pretty darn good. So next up is looking at the software, which is going to be the Drevo Power Console software. And here we have Drevo's Power Console software. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, honestly, because it is exactly the same software that you saw in my Blademaster Pro review. And if you want to see a more detailed overview of the software, you can go check it out there. I will link it here as well in a little card so that you can just click through if you're curious. But we'll do a quick overview anyway. I do want to remind you before we get started that you have to make an account to use this software. And that sucks. That still sucks. I really wish Drevo would remove that requirement, but you have to make an account on their website before you can configure your keyboard, which just seems totally unnecessary. But I already panned them for that in the Blademaster Pro review, so just wanted to mention it here. I did have to run a firmware update on this board and download a new version of the DPC, Drevo Power Console software, before I could use it with the Calibur V2. Okay, let's configure this thing. So here we see we've got a visual representation of the keyboard. We can click any key and we can rebind it as the default. You can disable it if you wanted to for some reason. You can bind any other keyboard function to it. Mouse functions, multimedia functions, or Windows shortcuts of various kinds. So good configurability there. You can save this to different kinds of profiles or different profiles and save and load them here. Or I guess you can load them here. I guess you save them in the profile manager, which is out here. Oops, right there. And so we can, interesting, I guess they're separate for each one. That makes sense. So anyway, getting back to this, the RGB backlighting configuration, which is kind of the meat of what you're doing here in this software. You've got all your effects here, everything we just went through. You can select, so you can go to whatever, I don't know, rotating, if you want, you just click on it and it changes it here on the board. I think outward is the one we were on. Yes, my favorite. Falling, let's say. It's that kind of raindrops like one. For each one, let's go spectrum. You can change the speed at which it cycles. There's quite a few levels of configurability. This one's very slow, fades through very slow or very quickly. Racing through them. And the brightness is configurable in 15 different steps, which is actually many more than you can do in just hardware. Same goes for the speed, actually. So, make it quite dim. No, that's off. There we go. Or quite bright. Let's go back to outward. Let's set it right in the middle there. And then on a per key basis, I believe you can configure the color. Let's just take a look. That might not work here. Oh, we have to turn off random color. There we go. I see. So we can control it for the whole board, the color, that is, from here. All these different colors, looking very nice. We'll say the reds don't get that rich. They look pretty pinkish. Well, they still look all right. Or you can set it back to the random color, which is not really random, but is actually rainbow. Anyway, but if you do want to do per key backlighting, oops, I believe that is available under user define here. So let's say, let's make W, I don't know, blue. There you go. Let's make T, let's say yellowy. Yeah. So as you can see, that takes effect right away. And you could do that in theory for every single key on your board if you wanted to have very specific color on every one. But I don't. I like the outward, so we're going to keep it like that. Maybe slightly slower. Keep it chill. And then the only other option here is the settings, which lets you turn game mode on or off. And game mode lets you activate a set of basically disables on various key combos. You can turn off Alt-Tab, Alt-F4, or the Windows key so that they don't interrupt your gaming session by accident. And a restore keyboard option to reset it to factory defaults. Notably missing here, you may have noticed, is the macro functionality. There is no macro recorder. Oh, here's a profile manager. It is available from within this module. But there is no macro recording functionality, which is really quite disappointing because that is something that we had with the Blademaster Pro and that I have seen on other inexpensive keyboards in the price range of the Calibur 2 or Calibur V2 here. So it's kind of disappointing that we don't have that option here. And of course there's nowhere to bind it here because it's not a thing. So I don't know. I don't know why Drevo opted to exclude macro recording and execution functionality. I would guess it just requires some more circuitry maybe on the board and it's cheaper to exclude it. But I'm a little disappointed it's not here. Personally, I don't use the function that much, but it's just a nice feature to have for people who like it. Anyway, that is the extent of the Drevo Power Console software for the Calibur V2. It is very functional, it is relatively clean, it is quite straightforward. I have no complaints, honestly, as far as keyboard software goes. It's pretty good. So I said we weren't going to spend a lot of time on it, but we kind of did anyway. Anyhow, next up is going to be the ever important typing test. I will tell you from my limited usage so far that when I said in the unboxing that I thought the switches felt a little smoother than Outemu browns I have used in past, that is not the case. They are slightly scratchy, just like other Outemu browns, just like Cherry MX browns. So nothing new there, but I will give you a chance to hear them in action here, then we'll talk about it a little bit after. So let's get on to the typing test. right, so we've had a chance to check out the Calibur V2. We've unboxed it. We've looked at the backlighting and the side lighting. We've checked out the software, and we've done the typing test. I myself have used it now regularly, daily, for several weeks, and I've had a chance to form my opinions on it. The typing experience, I would say, is pretty good. It's not my favorite board to type on ever, but it's totally competent. I will say I really, really like the layout. In fact, this is pretty close to my optimal layout. I've talked before about the ergonomic benefits of compact keyboards, and those are still in play here, absolutely. The ability to center it in a place that feels comfortable to type without having to stick the mouse way off to the side is really excellent. So huge props to Drevo for coming up with a layout that is incredibly functional but still compact and maintains that excellent keycap compatibility. There's really no weirdly sized keys on here, so you should be able to take any old set of keycaps, slap them on here, no problem. In terms of the actual switches, I think that personally I have less and less patience for scratchy switches, and Outemu's browns are very faithful clones of Cherry's browns, and Cherry's browns are slightly scratchy in the grand scheme of switches. Now, I notice these things because I'm spoiled and I have access to all kinds of different keyboards with different switches. You may not notice or may not be bothered by the slight scratchiness of these switches. Certainly, if you are familiar with Cherry's MX Brown switches, these Outemu Brown switches will feel very, very familiar to you. And they're totally functional. They're totally serviceable. The actuation force across them is nice and even. All of the switches worked. No quality control problems or anything like that. So, and of course, you can get this board with blue switches or red switches, should you prefer the clickies or the linears. The keycaps, the keycaps, in my opinion, are always a weak point of these Drevo boards. They are finished with this kind of matte black finish and then laser etched. I am just not a fan of that matte black finish. I think it gets kind of sticky and gooey and just dirty too easily. They look really, really nice, but I just don't like the way they feel under the fingers after a little while. Your mileage may vary though. I had someone in here testing it recently who said that they really liked it. They preferred that finish to a bare PBT or ABS finish. So, it really depends. Really depends on your preferences. Overall though, the usage experience has been really good, especially because of all that added functionality brought by those two extra columns of buttons on the right hand side. I think this board hits that perfect sweet spot between functionality and compact form factor, personally, for me. So that's kind of my rundown of my usage experience with Drevo's Calibur V2. So you know what time it is now. It's time to summarize the pros and the cons of this board before I give you my final verdict. And because I'm a positive kind of guy, we're going to start with the pros, as is tradition. I want to call out first the fantastic layout. I really can't stress this enough. I know I just talked about it, but honestly, I think Drevo has hit a really excellent balance of functionality and compact form factor here. And if I were to design my ideal layout for a compact keyboard, it would be something awfully close to this. So huge props to Drevo for the excellent and unique compact layout. Related to that is the excellent keycap compatibility. You could have a more compact layout that fits the same functions into a slightly tighter, smaller footprint. That said, you would be sacrificing keycap compatibility, so what Drevo has done here is accommodated and achieved the best of both worlds by giving you all this functionality, keeping it nice and tight and compact, and allowing you to slap on pretty much any keycap set that you might have. So they deserve to be commended for that as well. Next up, I want to call out the lighting, both the lovely backlighting and the side lighting. Side lighting is something that we are seeing more frequently in keyboards in the budget range, but it is still certainly not a standard feature by any stretch, so it's nice to see them both here. The backlighting implementation is good. The LEDs, again, have nice smooth gradients, are nice and colorful and saturated. Maybe don't look quite as nice as they did on the Blademaster Pro that I reviewed from Drevo previously, but they still look pretty good, and you are getting full 16.8 million color RGB backlighting support that is configurable through software. The side lighting somewhat less configurable, but it's still nice to see it. Speaking of configurability, this board uses the same Drevo Power Console software that we saw in Drevo's Blademaster Pro review, and it continues to be a pretty good piece of software. There are somewhat fewer options for the Calibur V2 than there were for the Blademaster Pro, but that's to be expected. It is a less feature-rich board. Generally, I find it to be pretty functional, regularly updated, reasonably clean, and fairly straightforward to use. And perhaps the best thing about the Calibur V2 is that you get all these things for a very reasonable price. This board is quite affordable, coming in at just $50 US, or if you want to use the coupon codes down in the video description, $45 US. Those will get you 10% off, so the price is hard to argue with. All that said, as you well know, I have yet to come across a keyboard that is truly flawless in every single way, and Drevo's Calibur V2 is no exception, so there are some cons for me to talk about here. The first and perhaps most significant of them being those mediocre keycaps. Again, some of this comes down to personal preference, but I'm just not a big fan of Drevo's keycaps. They're not double shot. They have a sort of matte textured finish on them that I think doesn't stand up to regular use very well. It just gets kind of oily and dirty and sticky. You can wipe it down, of course, and I encourage you to do so. But I would still rather see just kind of regular ABS double shot caps on these boards. Would they look as nice? Maybe not. And I understand that this style of keycap is part of Drevo's aesthetic, but I just don't think that they're as durable, and I don't think they feel as nice under the fingers. Overall, I just think that they're a somewhat inferior keycap. So that's my personal feelings on Drevo's keycaps anyway. I also have to criticize the lack of macro support with this board. The software that it uses, as I mentioned, the same as Drevo's Blademaster Pro. It is Drevo's Power Console software. It does let you rebind the function of each key, which is great to see, but weirdly there is no support for recording or executing macros on this board. For me personally, this isn't a huge deal because I very, very rarely program or use macros, but for some people, especially gamers who play MMOs or things where you might want to be able to bind functions like that to a key, it's a little bit disappointing that there appears to be no macro support on Drevo's Calibur V2. Another mild disappointment worth pointing out with this board is the lack of the side lighting control. You're basically stuck with the presets, and this is actually the same as it was on Drevo's Blademaster Pro and on other keyboards that I've reviewed with side lighting. It seems that the side lighting gets left out of the software configurability, so there's no way to configure side lighting in software. You're stuck with the preset colors or patterns. And I guess that's a bummer because if you want to, you can go into the software and dial in your perfect shade of whatever, blue or whatever, in the software for the backlighting. But the side lighting is going to be stuck on whatever the handful of preset color options are. And that's just kind of disappointing. It'd be nice to be able to make them match. So I would really like to see backlighting color support, or sorry, side lighting color support in Drevo's DPC software. And the final con that I'm going to mention here is kind of a weird one, and I actually meant to mention it in the keyboard usage rundown that I gave you just before this pros and cons summary, but I completely blanked on it. You've already had a chance to hear it though, and that is this is a weirdly loud keyboard, isn't it? Did you listen to the typing test? It's very clattery and clacky and pingy and just overall not a pleasant keyboard to listen to. And for some people, this isn't going to be a big deal at all, but I found it actually somewhat detracted from my enjoyment of using this board. And I know it's not the switches, because brown switches in general, A, are not actually all that loud, but B, I've used a lot of boards with Cherry MX Brown and even these exact Outemu Brown switches, and none of them were this loud. So it's something about the construction of the keyboard, maybe the back plate they use or the way it's secured to the case or to the PCB. Something to do with the way this board is put together results in this kind of loud, clattery, pingy typing experience, and it just detracts from it. It's not a deal breaker by any stretch. It's totally still a usable keyboard. I just would prefer it if it wasn't quite so weirdly loud. So, with all of that said and done, what is my final verdict on Drevo's Calibur V2 mechanical keyboard? Well, I like it. I like it a lot. I think it is a really solid and competitive product in the $50 and under price range, which is a very crowded segment of the mechanical keyboard market these days. But Drevo's Calibur V2 has a handful of features that do make it stand out. Chief among them is that really excellent, functional, but compact layout that is totally unique as far as I can tell. There are no other keyboards with this precise layout. And what Drevo manages to do is pack in not only the functionality into a small footprint, but maintain that excellent keycap compatibility. So you can go on Banggood or AliExpress or wherever and buy yourself a cheap set, like a $20 set of pudding caps, say PBT pudding caps, which I know I always harp on, but they look so good. They feel great, and they're really cheap. You could take those, you could slap them on here, and you could have a really rad looking little board with a lot of functionality, as well as that nice smooth RGB backlighting and that appealing side lighting as well. Of course, you have your choice of Outemu switches, and overall it's just a really unique and well put together package at the $50 price point. So yeah, absolutely, Drevo's Calibur V2 receives my recommendation. And if you're looking to pick it up, there are of course links down in the video description, as well as coupon codes for 10% off that will get you this board for $45, which in my opinion is excellent value. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of another relaxing review. Of course, special thanks to Drevo for sending over the review sample that we took a look at here today, and special thanks to all of you for watching. I hope, as always, that you found this review informative, and I hope you found it relaxing. And I look very forward to having you all back here next time for another episode of Relaxing Reviews. Bye for now, guys.